So when I first entered the workforce as a young Lindy, long before I was a rabbi, I worked with little children. Not surprising, perhaps, to some of you who know me and my endless energy and my giggles and my ability to be fun and get down on the floor and laugh. I taught mommy and me classes, and I was a preschool teacher, and later on an educator in religious school in a few different synagogues. And I loved this work because I always connected with what I'd like to call the itty bitties, the really little ones. The magic of young children is that they see things clearly, and often they have less of a filter, and they speak from their hearts. Later on in my career, I started leading prayer with children, and I found there was often less of a barrier for kids to experiment with prayer and to attempt to connecting with something bigger than themselves. I found that when I was teaching kids to pray, they were really able to open their hearts and just connect with something greater without the barriers that all of us adults have. Words for God, ideas of God, trauma, pain. How is there God in this world with everything that we have lived through? You might even say that kids can really see with their hearts. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly what is essentially invisible to the eye. Antoine St. Hawkesbury writes that. In the Torah this week, we read about 5 women who see the world with their heart. They have the courage to speak up to authority so that they might bring about a better society. Zelophehad's 5 daughters, and I'm going to name them because they are named 3 times in the Torah, all in a row, and that is almost an anomaly. Very few women get named in the Torah, let alone have 3 occurrences with each of their names. So his 5 daughters are Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcha, and Tirzah. And we know they're important because of the number of times that they are mentioned. So this week in the Torah, we find the earliest example of amending divine legislation. Who's a lawyer in the room? Any lawyers in the room? We got one over there. I know there's some at home too, 2 over there. So this is a divine amendment of the law this week. So I'm going to tell you the story. Indulge me for those of you who know. The residing law during Zelophehad's daughter's time was that men and sons would inherit their father's land upon their father passing away. Until these 5 women, no one had an issue with that. Kind of surprising. And it was a universal custom for men to inherit their parents' property. But when Zelophehad died, leaving only daughters, they realized with no sons in the family, and they were also not married, with no husbands, their father's land would not be inherited by them. So these women had the courage to go to the tent of meeting, to speak in front of Moses and 70 elders, and to advocate on their behalf. Now remember, they lived in a world not like ours. They lived in a world where women did not have very many have names, let alone power. And so they went to Moses. They went to the tent of meeting, and they asked if they could possibly inherit their father's land. Moses hears this, and he promises to take this question to God. And God hears their plea and says, "You should give them a hereditary holding among their father's kinsmen. Transfer their father's share to them." God then goes on to outline that if a landholder dies without having a son, that he should transfer the land to his daughters, and leaving daughters to take precedence over any other family member other than sons. It's outstanding that God rules so quickly in their favor, and perhaps a little more challenging to think about, why did Moses and these 70 elders not think to change this sooner? Rashi, the medieval Bible commentator, teaches us that Zelophehad's 5 daughters' eyes saw what Moses' eyes did not see. And Rabbi Bradley Shavit Artson teaches that the daughters saw with their heart instead of their eyes. So this week, in our country, another woman rose up as a Democratic candidate for the president. She is already beginning her campaign and speaking and standing up for what she believes in. And yes, she has already faced misogyny, racism, and even some anti-Semitism as a result of announcing herself for candidacy and some of her possible running mates. Regardless of which party you vote for, or how you feel about Kamala Harris as a candidate, the fact that we have an African-American woman running for president who has a Jewish first man as her partner is quite extraordinary. And as you know, Kol Ami, voice of my people, we are living in unprecedented times. In times with war in Israel and Gaza, the immense drama on our national stage, the fight for LGBTQIA+ rights, for women's reproductive rights, and so many underserved populations whose well-being is on the line. This is a time for Kol Ami, for us to learn from these women, the 5 daughters, and for us to see also with our hearts. The goal of leadership is to be a voice for the people, like our name means, Kol Ami, voice of my people. We will speak up for the voiceless. We will hold our community to a higher standard of a moral imperative. As Jews, we know that we too must see with our hearts. We must open our eyes to issues of the houseless in our community. We must not turn a blind eye to the anti-Semitism erupting on our college campuses and throughout the country. And as a spiritual community, we come together on Shabbat to comfort, to celebrate, to grieve, and to pray for a world that we imagine. Zelophehad's 5 daughters were courageous enough to stand up, to speak up in a time when women were silenced, invisible, and they successfully even encouraged God to amend a divine law, leaving a legacy for those who came after them to live a little bit better than they had. This is nothing if not extraordinary for its time. And Judaism has so much to teach us about how we might see with our hearts. So this coming year, we will be asked to speak up, to stand up, to vote, and to exercise our rights. And as a community, Kol Ami, as we enter this season of heavy campaigning, I want to invite you to truly see, not only with your eyes, but with your minds and with your hearts, so that together we can build not only a spiritual community, but a community of human beings who act on the behalf of those who are disenfranchised, who stand up for those who are weary and disempowered, and who use our voice for good, so that we may leave a legacy to empower those who come after us to live a little better. Shabbat Shalom.